Hello. So in this episode of Writing Notes, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be reading an essay called The Difficulties of Persuasion by Han Fei Tzu. So Han Fei Tzu was a 3rd century BCE Chinese philosopher of the Legalist school, and they were very interested in authority and using the law to discipline citizens, using the law to ensure social order through a strict system of punishments and rewards. So that's not super central to the essay that I'm going to read you, which is primarily about audience awareness. So Han Fei Tzu's The Difficulties of Persuasion focuses on anticipating your audience's values, anticipating their needs, etc., which is something I've talked about elsewhere on this channel. So here again, The Difficulties of Persuasion. On the whole, the difficult thing about persuading others is not that one lacks the knowledge needed to state his case, nor the audacity to exercise his abilities to the full. On the whole, the difficult thing about persuasion is to know the mind of the person one is trying to persuade and to be able to fit one's words to it. If the person you're trying to persuade is out to establish a reputation for virtue, and you talk to him about making a fat profit, then he will regard you as low-bred, accord you a shabby and contemptuous reception, and undoubtedly send you packing. If the person you're trying to persuade is on the contrary interested in a fat profit and you talk to him about a virtuous reputation, he'll regard you as witless and out of touch with reality and will never heed your arguments. If the person you're trying to persuade is secretly out for big gain, but ostensibly claims to be interested in a virtuous name alone, and you talk to him about a reputation for virtue, then he will pretend to welcome and heed you, but in fact will shunt you aside. If you talk to him about making a big gain, he will secretly follow your advice but ostensibly reject you. These are facts that you must not fail to consider carefully. Undertakings succeed through secrecy but fail through being found out. Though the ruler himself has not yet divulged his plans, if you in your discussions happen to hit upon his hidden motives, then you will be in danger. If the ruler is ostensibly seeking one thing but is actually attempting to accomplish something quite different, and you perceive not only his ostensible objective but the real motives behind his actions as well, then you will be in danger. If you happen to think up some unusual scheme for the ruler which meets with his approval, and some other person of intelligence manages by outside means to guess what it is, and divulges the secret to the world, then the ruler will suppose that it was you who gave it away, and you will be in danger. If you've not yet won substantial reward and favor, and yet your words are extremely apt and wise, then if the ruler heeds them and the undertaking is successful, he will forget to reward you. And if he does not heed them and the undertaking fails, he will regard you with suspicion, and you will be in danger. If some person of eminence takes a brief step in the wrong direction and you immediately launch into a lecture on ritual principles and challenge his misdeed, then you will be in danger. If some eminent person gets hold of a good scheme somewhere and plans to use it to win merit for himself, and you happen to know where he got it, then you will be in danger. If you try forcibly to talk a person into doing what he cannot do or stopping what he cannot stop, then you will be in danger. If you're talking to the ruler about men of real worth, he will think you are implying that he is no match for them. If you talk to him of petty men, he will think that you are attempting to use your influence to get your friends into office. If you talk to him about what he likes, he will suspect you of trying to utilize him. If you talk to him about what he hates, he will suspect you of trying to test his patience. If you speak too bluntly and to the point, he will consider you unlearned and will shun you. If you speak too eloquently and in too great detail, he will consider you pretentious and will reject you. If you're too sketchy in outlining your ideas, he will think you a coward who's too faint-hearted to say what he really means. If you are too exuberant and long-winded in stating your proposals, he will think you an uncouth bumpkin who's trying to talk down to him. These are the difficulties of persuasion. You cannot afford to be ignorant of them. The important thing in persuasion is to learn how to play up the aspects that the person you are talking to is proud of, and play down the aspects he is ashamed of. Thus, if the person has some urgent personal desire, you should show him that it's in his public duty to carry it out and urge him not to delay. If he has some mean objective in mind and yet cannot restrain himself, you should do your best to point out to him whatever admirable aspects it may have and to minimize the reprehensible ones. If he has some lofty objective in mind and yet does not have the ability needed to realize it, you should do your best to point out to him the faults and bad aspects of such an objective, and make it seem a virtue not to pursue it. If he is anxious to make a show of wisdom and ability, mention several proposals which are different from the one you have in mind, but of the same general nature, in order to supply him with ideas. Then let him build on your words, but pretend that you are unaware that he is doing so, and in this way abet his wisdom. If you wish to urge a policy of peaceful coexistence, then be sure to expound it in terms of lofty ideals, but also hint that it is commensurate with the ruler's personal interests. If you wish to warn the ruler against dangerous and injurious policies, then make a show of the fact that they invite reproach and moral censure, but also hint that they are inimical to his personal interests. Praise other men whose deeds are like those of the person you are talking to. Commend other actions that are based upon the same policies as his. If there's someone else who is guilty of the same vice he is, be sure to gloss it over by showing that it really does no great harm. If there is someone else who has suffered the same failure he has, be sure to defend it by demonstrating that it was not a loss after all. If he prides himself on his physical prowess, do not antagonize him by mentioning the difficulties he's encountered in the past. If he considers himself an expert at making decisions, do not anger him by pointing out his past errors. If he pictures himself as a sagacious planner, do not tax him with his failures. Make sure that there is nothing in your ideas as a whole that will vex your listener, and nothing about your words that will rub him the wrong way, and then you may exercise your powers of rhetoric to the fullest. This is the way to gain the confidence and intimacy of the person you are addressing, and to make sure that you are able to say all that you have to say without incurring his suspicion. Yi Yin became a cook, and Po Li Si a captive slave, so they could gain the ear of the ruler. These men were sages, and yet they could not avoid shouldering hard tasks for the sake of advancement and demeaning themselves in this way. Therefore, you too should become a cook or a slave when necessary. If this enables you to gain the confidence of the ruler and save the state, then it is no disgrace for a man of ability to take such a course. If you're able to fulfill long years of service with the ruler, enjoy his fullest favor and confidence, lay long-range plans for him without ever arousing suspicion, and when necessary oppose him in argument without incurring blame, then you may achieve merit by making clear to him what is profitable and what is harmful, and bring glory to yourself by your forthright judgments of right and wrong. When ruler and minister aid and sustain each other in this way, persuasion may be said to have reached its fulfillment. In ancient times, Duke Wu of Cheng wanted to attack the state of Hu, and so he first married his daughter to the ruler of Hu in order to fill his mind with thoughts of pleasure. He then told his ministers, "I want to launch a military campaign. What would be a likely state to attack?" The high official Chuan Chi Su replied, "Hu could be attacked." Whereupon Duke Wu flew into a rage and had him executed, saying, "Hu is a brother state. What do you mean by advising me to attack it?" Now the ruler of Hu, hearing this, assumed that Cheng was friendly toward him, and therefore took no precautions to defend himself from Cheng. The men of Cheng made a surprise attack on Hu and seized it. Once there was a rich man of Sung. When the dirt wall around his house collapsed in a heavy rain, his son said, "If you don't rebuild it, thieves will surely break in." And the old man who lived next door told him the same thing. When night fell, thieves actually broke in and made off with a large share of the rich man's wealth. The rich man's family praised the son for his wisdom, but eyed the old man next door with suspicion. Both of these men, the high official Chun Chi Su and the old man next door, spoke the truth. And yet, one was actually executed for his words while the other cast suspicion on himself. It's not difficult to know a thing. What is difficult is to know how to use what you know. Jiao Chou spoke the truth, but though he was regarded as a sage by the men of Qin, he was executed by those of Qin. This is something you cannot afford not to examine. In ancient times, Mi Tzu Sai won favor with the ruler of Wei. According to the laws of the state of Wei, anyone who secretly made use of the ruler's carriage was punished by having his feet amputated. When Mi Tzu Sai's mother fell ill, someone slipped into the palace at night to report this to Mi Tzu Sai. Mi Tzu Sai forged an order from the ruler, got into the ruler's carriage, and went off to see her. But when the ruler heard of it, he only praised him, saying, "How filial! For the sake of a mother, he forgot all about the danger of having his feet cut off." Another day, Mi Tzu Sai was strolling with the ruler in an orchard, and, biting into a peach and finding it sweet, he stopped eating and gave the remaining half to the ruler to enjoy. "How sincere is your love for me!" exclaimed the ruler. "You forget your own appetite and think only of giving me good things to eat." Later, however, when Mi Tzu Sai's looks had faded and the ruler's passion for him had cooled, he was accused of committing some crime against his lord. "After all," said the ruler, "he once stole my carriage, and another time he gave me a half-eaten peach to eat." Mi Tzu Sai was actually acting no differently from the way he always had. The fact that he was praised in the early days and accused of a crime later on was because the ruler's love had turned to hate. If you gain the ruler's love, your wisdom will be appreciated and you will enjoy his favor as well. But if he hates you, not only will your wisdom be rejected, but you will be regarded as a criminal and thrust aside. Hence, men who wish to present their remonstrances and expound their ideas must not fail to ascertain the ruler's loves and hates before launching into their speeches. The beast called the dragon can be tamed and trained to the point where you may ride on its back. But on the underside of its throat, it has scales a foot in diameter that curl back from the body, and anyone who chances to brush against them is sure to die. The ruler of men, too, has his bristling scales. Only if a speaker can avoid brushing against them will he have any hope of success.